Okay, so that all seems to be working. So welcome everybody. We're going to get going. So we're already a few minutes past the hour. And welcome everybody to this webinar, which is strategic planning for charities. What we hope to be able to do over the next hour or so is try a process of strategic planning. Perhaps this is the first time you've ever had to embark on pulling together a strategic plan for your organisation, or perhaps you're a new organisation that's never had a strategy before. We hope that we'll be able to share some of our experience and learning and tips about how you kind of get to grips with the idea of setting your strategic plan. So we hope to leave you with a few tools and ideas that should set you on your way. So who are we? I'm Katy Baker, and this is my colleague Will. And we're Director of Special Projects and Consultant, respectively, at Oaks Consultancy. And at Oaks, we work with a whole range of organisations across the non-profit sectors. So that's everyone from charities to the education sector, to the sport and sport for development world. And we support them in a range of different ways through things like helping them develop their strategic plan and setting their strategic direction. We work with a lot of organisations around thinking around their fundraising strategy and how they're going to fund and actually deliver their strategy. And then we have some colleagues who work with our clients over a longer period of time to help them raise that income to enable them to deliver on their strategy and have an impact on the communities and in the world. So in terms of what we're going to be covering today, so we're going to kick off with really kind of the very basics. What is a strategic plan and why is it important? Why are we here today talking about one? And then I will take you through some kind of ideas and approaches around a strategy structure and some of the key principles that you need to think about. And then Will is going to talk you through developing a compelling vision and mission, and also how to approach your stakeholder consultation, how to map the stakeholders that you want to talk to. And then we're going to finish off by thinking about what the strategic focus areas or themes that actually support your higher level strategy, what do they look like, how do you come up with those, and how do you take that down lastly into a kind of action plan and KPIs and the operational elements of actually delivering your strategy. And we do hope at the end that we'll have some time for questions, and just in case there's anything we've not covered or anything that you wanted to clarify, we've got the kind of chat function and even the Q&A function. You can submit your questions in either or, and we will do our best to answer them. So we will get straight stuck in. So why are we here? What is a strategic plan? So really your strategic plan is a roadmap that helps you set out what your organisation is going to achieve and how you're going to get there. And really it should answer three things. So where are we today, as in your organisation? Why does it exist? What impact does it has it set out to achieve? What are the communities that you serve? What's the history? And even things like how have you performed to date, so either from your last strategy or from when the charity was set up. It also needs to answer, where do you want to go? So what do you want to achieve over the next 3, 5, 10 years? And then finally, what actions do you need to take to make it happen? So what are you going to do to achieve that strategic plan? And it's worth saying, to kind of start with, before we go into the benefits, lots of organisations don't actually have a strategy. So particularly if you're a new or young charity, you may not actually yet have set your strategy, and that you know why you exist as an organisation, and from a day-to-day perspective, you know what it is that you want to achieve, but you may not yet have had a chance to sit down and think through, you know, kind of what you want to achieve in the longer term. Or you might be a more established organisation, and particularly over recent years with COVID, and then going straight into the kind of economic situation that we're in, many organisations actually haven't had the headspace or the resources to sit down and renew their strategy. Many are just concentrating on the status quo, fighting fires and getting through each day, week, month at a time. And that's okay. That isn't going to do you any immediate harm, but for any organization to really think about how it can improve, how it can grow, how it can increase its impact, it's really helpful to have a strategy. And the reason why, is very much set out kind of on the slide in front of you. So it gives you an opportunity to unite your organization towards a single common goal. So everybody working within the organization, your volunteers, your trustees, anyone involved, all pulling together for the same thing, for the same reason. It absolutely helps you identify opportunities for growth and development. So for many organizations, particularly, the established ones I've just talked about, who are fighting fires and, just trying to maintain the status quo, it's not that easy to set aside time to think about other opportunities and how you can grow. So really carving out some space to set a strategy allows you to think about the opportunities that could lie ahead in a more formal and structured way, and think about how you could do something about them. It hopefully allows you to use your time, energy and resources better, because you haven't got lots of people stretched very thinly trying to do lots of different things. Everybody knows what they're doing, why they're doing it, and what they're pulling together to achieve. So it improves efficiencies and essentially gives you that kind of better planning opportunity to make sure that the limited resources that you have are used in the best way possible. And in a similar way to giving you some time to think about those opportunities, it can help you identify and plan those threats before they arise. So those could be kind of internal weaknesses that you have. So thinking about how your infrastructure, your capacity, your people need to grow. And if they don't, how are you going to maintain what you're doing at the quality that you'd like to do it? It could be about the kind of more infrastructure and resources side of things. So in terms of IT, corporate services, policies, those things that may trip you up if you don't get them into place. It also could be thinking about the external things that could be coming up on the horizon. So a change of government, big changes in policy, the economic situation. So again, giving you that time and space to think about those things that lie ahead that you may want to try and identify and plan for now. We do know after the last few years, you can't plan for everything, but absolutely having a strategy just gives you that headspace to think through what some of those things might be. Going through a strategic planning process is a perfect opportunity to engage with your stakeholders and those people that are in the kind of environment around your organisation that really mean something to you or contribute to the success of your organisation. And there's no doubt each and every one of you engages with your stakeholders in a whole variety of ways every day, every week, every month. So whether that's your beneficiaries, whether that's partners, whether that's funders, commissioners, whoever it might be, you're talking to them, but actually it's not very often you get the opportunity to either sit down with them or in a really structured way, get them to answer some questions around your performance and your effectiveness and what impact that you have within your communities, or what opportunities they think you should be taking advantage of. So going through that process of stakeholder engagement by itself is hugely valuable, as much as it is a great contributor to writing your strategy. And then finally, it's a great opportunity to just take stock and reflect on everything that you've achieved to date. So thinking about the progress that you've made and the impact you have can be hugely motivating. It also helps you benchmark against not only your own performance, but those other organisations within the kind of charity subsector that you're in, and see if there are opportunities for you to learn from others. And improve based on what you've learned about yourself through going through a strategy. So, going back to the top of this slide, many exist without one. It's probably not advised though, for all of these reasons. And what we hope to be able to do today is just break it down in a way that makes it feel a little less overwhelming, and demystifies kind of what really going through that process looks like. So strategy structure, and I think that this is probably, you know, and I certainly talk from personal experience, where it feels the most overwhelming. So where do we even start? What does a strategy look like? What should be included? What sections does a normal, I say that in inverted commas, strategy look like? And I say that because there is no one size fits all. Every organization's strategy will look different, and there's loads of really great examples out there that you could read through, look at, and take inspiration from. And we would absolutely encourage you to do that. But there are definitely some kind of quite accepted kind of templates and structures that we will kind of talk about today that will help you come up, even if it's with that first strategy to set you on your way. And then you can reflect and learn on that for strategy number 2, or for the second or third time you go through this process. But the first thing you really need to consider is, who are you writing the strategy for? So as a smaller organization or a very new organization, for example, you might not have lots of big external stakeholders or lots of people that would visit your website, for example. So you may not need a strategic plan that is suitable for the general public and for the whole world to read. You might just need something that is used internally by yourselves, by your colleagues, by your trustees, certainly, and by your staff and your volunteers. But for many organizations who actually do want to communicate to the world what their strategy is, and perhaps who would like to see a strategy, or may go and do some research on you in support of an application for funding, or a potential partner wants to learn more about you, or even future beneficiaries actually want to learn a little bit more about the organization, then for those, there is potentially the need to have a kind of external document. And we'll talk a little bit more about the differences, but in summary, an internal strategic document is much shorter. So, you know, it's probably less work in terms of the writing of it, even if the actual process of learning about your kind of environment, doing the stakeholder consultation and setting those goals is the same. Actually, that final document doesn't need to be as lengthy as it would be if it was an external document. And that's because you don't need to have the kind of huge focus on the organizational context. So you don't need to talk about who you are, your history, the communities you support, and the impact that you have, because everybody who's reading it knows that, essentially. But where there will be more focus is on the operational elements. So having more of a plan. So, you know, you have the kind of key components of your strategy, but then you focus much more operationally and on things like performance measures and KPIs. Whereas an external one, that kind of initial introduction and the kind of narrative that you write at the start is much longer form and does include summary of the organization, history, performance to date, or performance since last strategy. So yeah, there is a key difference, and it's much more focused on the higher level strategic aims and goals that you want to achieve. So to break down that further, in an internal strategic plan, you would have your vision statement, your mission statement, and then potentially you may include your values. And the reason why we have that as optional is because some organizations choose to think about the values that reflect the organization and what values are important to them to enable them to deliver their strategic plan as part of one of these processes. Because it's a great opportunity to piggyback onto the stakeholder consultation that you're already doing, to understand the things that are going to enable you to be able to deliver your strategy in terms of the behaviours and the values and morals that are important for you to get there. But it's by no means essential. Sometimes it's kept completely separate to a strategic plan, and maybe kind of more of a focus of someone who's responsible for people and culture within the organisation, for example. But it's completely up to you. You will see examples with both included and not included. You would then, in your internal strategic plan, have that kind of high-level goal or goals, as well as your strategic themes. And we'll go into more detail about what these actually mean later on. So don't worry if it doesn't mean much at this point. And then a real focus on kind of the objectives that support those strategic themes and the KPIs to help you measure them. Whereas an external strategic plan has much more of a focus on the context, like I said, so the history, who are you, how were you set up as a charity, you know, lots about the communities you support, all that data and supporting evidence. You will also have a review of the impact that you've achieved since you set up or since the last strategic plan. Then you go into your vision, mission and values, high-level goals, strategic themes and focus areas. And then a nuance here in terms of this last point. So instead of KPIs and objectives, perhaps more level measures of success. So just setting out to the reader, how will they know you've achieved what you said you were going to do as part of this strategy? So some really high level measures. And that's all you would really have as that external strategic plan. What I did want to just kind of touch upon before we go on to Will's slide, sorry, Will, is the kind of length of your strategy in terms of the time scale. So it's really common to see strategies that span 3 or 5 years. And the reason why that's common is because it's far enough in the future to be able to make a change and, you know, be somewhat ambitious and think about the direction of the organization over a period of time and make some changes to support your kind of ambition over that strategic period. But equally, it's not so far in the future that the whole world will look completely different by the time you get to that point. Probably more recently at Oaks is organizations looking almost at a kind of dual time frame. So their strategy, their strategic plan covers 3 or 5 years, but what they also talk about within their strategic plan is some kind of high level aspirations for maybe 10 or 15 years time, with acknowledgement that they might change and how they're going to achieve them will probably look really different because the world will continue to change, and that absolutely they will still review their strategy in 3 to 5 years time, but just it allows them, if they're thinking about 10 to 15 years as well in this process, to just continue to be ambitious and focus about the bigger picture change that they want to make. So it's completely up to you again, but you may just want to think about, you know, whether this is going to be just purely we want a plan that helps us achieve some great things in the next 3 or 5 years, or we want that, but we also want to just think about the kind of longer term and what that looks like. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to Will, who's going to start talking about vision and mission.
Thanks, Katie. And you'll see from the previous slides that vision and mission really are an integral part of both the internal and external documents. And before I kind of go into defining what these are, I'm going to talk a little bit about the benefits of having a vision and mission statement. And one of the first questions we get asked is from our clients is, do we really need a vision and mission statement? Are they a tick box exercise? Are they something that is going to be impactful? And my answer always is, well, it depends. If you do the necessary collaborative practice that will lead you to a consolidated vision and mission statement, then they can be really impactful things both within the strategy's timeframe and beyond. And some of the benefits of having vision and mission statements that are really consolidated and really concise is that it provides that alignment throughout your organization from the perspective of multiple stakeholders. It also aids decision making. So, for example, if you're in year 3 of a 5-year strategy and you're a leader within a small charity and a piece of work comes across your desk, one of 2 things are going to happen. If that piece of work isn't exactly aligned with your vision and mission, then maybe you need to look at changing your vision and mission statement to suit that demand of that piece of work if it's something that is integral to your beneficiaries' priorities. Or you look at that piece of work and say, this is not something that aligns with our vision and mission, and therefore we need to redirect ourselves to make sure that operationally we are always striving to achieve achieve our mission and vision. And going back to defining these, the vision statement is basically an articulation of an idealistic image of the world your charity is trying to create. And that could be a world that is going to benefit you as a charity. It can be benefiting the sector, everyone, or just the lives of your beneficiaries. And your mission statement essentially explores the how-to and offers an explanation in terms of the organization's existence and why it exists, and articulates how you're going to achieve your vision. And to put it more metaphorically, your vision statement is a beautiful, idealistic painting, and your mission is the artist, the brushstrokes, and the coloring that you use to build that beautiful painting. Next slide, please, Katie.
Yeah, sorry, just gone to the screen, went to sleep.
Here's some examples of really concise vision and mission statements. And you'll see there that the vision statements often speak about the world we seek to create, a world we seek, a world where all athletes. And you're probably thinking, especially some of you that come from quite smaller charities, that UNICEF, the World Anti-Doping Agency, and CARE are quite large organizations and may be able to impact the world. But I would say, don't worry about being ambitious and don't sell yourself short. You may be contributing to a better world from your strategy. And I think it will be great for your beneficiaries and funders to be well aware that you're looking to create a better world for them and for the sector you work in. And you'll see there that some of those mission statements follow the same suit in terms of offering a bit more clarity and explanation in terms of answering that how question. I'm not going to read all of these out, but these are some really great examples of live vision and mission statements. Now going into how we can write the vision and mission. We know why a vision and mission are important. We've seen some great examples, but how do we go about writing them? And the first point on here is start at the end and work backwards. So that feeds into what I was saying earlier around starting with that idealistic image and putting that into words and feeding back from that. And this is where you can start to engage those stakeholders and key people that can help bring that to life and put that into words. And then the second point here is probably, for me, is probably one of the most important. This is where you look to engage those real key internal stakeholders that essentially are going to help you find your vision and mission, because these are the key people that are going to be delivering your vision. So they need to be, one, bought in, and two, be represented in the decision-making that goes into creating your vision and mission. And then three, know what makes your organization shine, essentially. So you'll be well aware of what your funders, what your beneficiaries, what your donors say about you, what they love about you. And this point is really about how we bring that to life, essentially, how we can reflect all of the great things about your organization in your vision and mission statement. And point four, I mentioned that point two is, for me, the most important, and point four is probably one of the hardest and definitely a challenge for Katie and I when we work with our clients on this. And this is basically around making sure that your vision and mission statements, because we know they take place in both the internal and external documents. So they need to be interpreted the same by everyone that comes across your strategy. And I think we do tend to fall in the trap, I know I do, where we're starting to use maybe acronyms, specialist jargon that potentially might not be interpreted in the same way as someone that's not inside your sector. So keeping it simple is really important. And then testing it out. There's never a perfect model. And I think my example about being in a 5-year strategy and being in year 3, at that point, you can look at re-reviewing your vision and mission statement and to really identify if your sector has changed. And if it has changed, what does this mean for your strategy? What does it mean for your vision and mission? But you can kind of start creating that reflective practice early on and testing it out. I mean, I know that when we work on strategy development processes for our clients, it does tend to take a long time to really nail down a perfect vision and mission. And what I would advise for this element of creating your vision and mission statement is to create some long form, quite wordy paragraphs that outline your vision and mission, and then start to condense those down as you move on. And then you should come across a really nice and simple, concise couple of sentences that outline your organization's vision and mission. So that's why vision and mission are important, how we can use them and how we can arrive at them. Now we're going to talk a little bit about stakeholder consultation. So stakeholder consultation, Katy touched upon it earlier, and we know that during the vision and mission process that we started to engage some staff members and potentially some trustees to feed in to that process. And before I go into kind of defining what this can look like, I'll again kind of go into the benefits of stakeholder consultation. So for instance, if you're talking to a wide range of individuals and organizations, you can get a sense of their own priorities, whether it be the priorities of your beneficiaries, priorities of your collaborators, priorities of your donors or your funders, and that can help to influence decision-making. Also, if you're talking to organizations that are already working within your sector, you can almost get a sense of where the sector is heading and start to risk mitigate and start to future plan, which is really beneficial. And also, if you're creating a culture around your organization that includes the insights of stakeholders, and throughout the strategic plan, a stakeholder who's contributed to the project can really see the insights that they were given reflected in the strategic plan, that will create a culture of collaboration. And that is a real good foundation that you could build upon in the future. And there's multiple different mapping tools associated with stakeholder consultation. And what Katy and I have done is we've condensed these into kind of 5 areas. And one thing that I would like to mention is sometimes variety is more impactful than volume. So for instance, if you had 2 or 3 individuals or organizations that either fit within any of these categories, so staff, board members, supporters and friends, members, customers, beneficiaries, other individuals and organizations, and competitors and critics. If you have 3, 4, 5 within each of these areas, it may be more impactful, or the insights may carry more weight than having 20 different stakeholders within 2 of these categories. So don't be disheartened if you're quite a small charity or fairly new charity and your stakeholders are fairly limited, because you can get a good sense of insight from the variety of stakeholders that you chat with. And what you're really looking to do with talking to your stakeholders is you're looking to gain a sense of their own perception of your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, but also look for those continuous threads. And what I mean by continuous threads is if multiple people from each of these groups are saying a similar thing and they have no connection whatsoever, that can be quite impactful.
Very well.
There you go. No worries.
Sorry, it's like glitchy computer today. Apologies.
So here's some examples of what good stakeholder consultation should look like. And the first point there is informed. So at Oaks, we like to make sure that our consultation projects are quite fluid, they're conversational, the register slightly dropped in a way that promotes comfortability, because we find when we talk to people, they're a lot more honest if they're comfortable, if it's more conversational. But that doesn't mean that the purpose of the consultation is lost. And what we like to do, or what we advise, is essentially sending the contributor maybe a week before the consultation is due to take place, a bit of a brief, maybe some of the focus areas that you'd like to discuss with them, to essentially give them a bit of a chance to consolidate their thoughts so that the session is really impactful. Then moving on to representative, and this kind of feeds on to what I was mentioning earlier around making sure that you use people from all of those categories, because that gives you a real good representation across all of your stakeholders. And like I've mentioned previously, if stakeholders can really see that what they've said and what they've contributed has aided decision-making within your organization, that will really build trust in your brand and incite further collaboration. And inclusive, this point's really, really important, but so you need to make sure that your consultation and these chats that are taking place are designed in the way that will make your respondee quite comfortable, essentially. So whether this be an in-person chat, whether this be a focus group, a phone call. Maybe sometimes people just like to be sent a list of questions and provide you responses in a written format. You need to make sure that that person feels as comfortable as possible so that they're able to contribute in their own way. And point 4, it requires a little bit of honesty from the people that are conducting the consultations. Is you need to be considerate of the balance of power. And what I mean by this is essentially you need to look at who you are. If you're a CEO of a charity, I need to think about how who you are may influence those conversations. For example, if you're a CEO of a charity and you're talking to funders or you're talking to staff members, how will your position influence what they're saying and their honesty levels? And also, no one likes to hear the developmental points or the points where your organization or your charity is perhaps not performing in the eyes of some stakeholders. So we have a tendency to almost find the positives in those conversations, and we may not want to bring to life some of those negative points. So you may want to consider bringing someone else in to kind of hold those discussions that can be impartial, that can collate all the insights and present it in a way that's neutral and also collaborative. So as much as the same as the vision and mission statements and finding those statements, stakeholder consultation shouldn't be seen as a tick box exercise. They really are an asset and a resource for decision making, can really build out the rest of the strategy, which leads me quite helpfully into Katy's next slide.
Yeah, absolutely. It's thinking about next the kind of so what of your stakeholder consultation. So you've put all this time and energy into talking to this, really representative range of stakeholders, but what do you do with it? And as Will quite rightly pointed out, you don't ever want that stakeholder consultation to be seen as a tick box exercise. That's not great in terms of that relationship with those stakeholders, but also using the data and insight you get from that consultation will help you develop a much more relevant and impactful strategy. But again, kind of how do you then take, if you've got survey responses, you've got notes from interviews, you've got all of this kind of data lying around, how do you then turn it into content that can become your strategic plan? So the first thing really simply is take a read through, and Will talked about those kind of common threads or common themes, didn't you, that you start to identify. So when you start to hear those and read those, start to note those down. So things that you're hearing over and over again, particularly where you're hearing it across different stakeholder groups. But actually, if you've got beneficiaries saying very loudly one thing, that is also, really impactful and something that you should take notice of. Then once you've kind of read through it and started to note down those themes, really start to categorize them. So, it could be, as an example, if you were a youth charity, you've delivering perhaps youth projects or services to young people in your community, you might hear that the young people all really enjoy coming to your activities and projects, but they would like a bit more variety, or they would like some support around mental health that you don't currently offer. So, you might want to kind of label that under kind of growth of your projects and activities, but also doing something new. That's come up. They are asking for something new. It could be that the same youth charity, the parents of those young people are saying, we love what you do, it's really great and supports our young people, but we don't feel like you talk to the school as much as we'd like to. So there isn't as much partnership between what's going on in school and out of school for their son or daughter. The same youth charity might hear potentially from the kind of local authority that they have huge respect for the services and projects they deliver, and actually they would like them to do more in different geographical locations. And then finally, the same charity could hear a competitor or a charity who delivers similar services, again, kind of really admires what they're doing and would be open to talking about perhaps collaborating to see if they could identify bigger pots of funding that they could use to increase each of their individual organizations' impact. So, some of these could be different things that you're hearing, and you could put them under different themes around partnership working, around more of what you're doing. It could be new things that you wanted to do. And then taking all of that, as well as the conversations you've had with your colleagues, so your team members, your leadership team, your volunteers, particularly your trustees, and taking all of that information and perhaps performing something like a SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis, you know, lots of people use it. The reason why they use it is because it's actually very effective at what it does in terms of just starting to break down information, identify some opportunities and things that you might want to focus on. But there are plenty of other tools out there if you prefer to use something else. But it, you know, it can help you identify where your strengths are. So what your stakeholders told you you're good at, what your trustees think you're good at, what your colleagues and teams think you're good at, what you think you need to improve on. What are the opportunities out there that perhaps your stakeholders think you should take advantage of? And equally, what are those threats? What are those things that are happening in the external environment that could be something that you need to think about and address? So taking that, categorizing them, coming up, when we say 3 to 5 kind of broad categories, these could then form the foundation of your strategic focus areas, also known as strategic themes, also known as strategic pillars. Lots of people call it lots of different things. One thing I also wanted to say is that some organizations actually set a kind of single strategic goal for their strategic plan, which sits under the vision and mission statement, but then above the strategic focus areas, and just really sets out one big thing that they want to achieve in this strategy period. So it could be, for that youth charity that I used as an example, they want to offer activities and services to every young person in that local authority in the strategic period. That's what they're working towards, and then their strategic things will help them do that. It could be that if you're more focused on advocacy, policy, campaigning, that you want to actually lobby to get one thing changed in that strategic period, and that is going to be your big focus, and everything that you do across your strategic themes and everything else supports that. By all means, you don't need to do that. You don't have to have one of them. But, you know, if you do go away and start looking at other people's strategies, you might see these things. And it can be really helpful to just narrow down ever so slightly from that vision and mission level to what is that single thing you really want to focus on in this strategic period. So you've got your vision, you've got your mission, you've done your stakeholder consultation, you have a really clear idea on some of the themes that are coming out loud and clear, and you understand your strengths and weaknesses. You may or may not have that kind of single strategic goal. How do you really develop the strategic focus areas or pillars or themes, whatever you want to call them, and what really do they look like? What do they mean in practice? So they provide structure to your strategy. They're the building blocks, the foundations. They break it down into different sections, and each one has its own goal. When you're presenting it within a strategic plan document, they need to be pretty short and memorable. They don't need to have reams of text. It's about, you know, setting out what we want to actually do in this theme. Be very focused, so don't try to be too broad. It's about one area of your work, one area of your organization, or one issue that you really want to focus on, and that it needs to be outcome orientated. So again, it's about being focused, but focused on the outcome. But by no means do you need to have lots of KPIs or measures, you know, at this point in terms of the development. Just, you know, that the focus area really is about a change you want to see or work towards within that strategic plan. And on the next slide, we're going to give you some examples of the kinds of strategic focus areas that will often come out through our work with some of the clients that we work with or that we see in other people's strategic plans. So a really obvious one is growth. So growth in terms of number of people or beneficiaries that you support or reach, new locations, new geographies, expansion. So growth is a really common one, and most organizations in most strategies are going to have an element of growth, even if it's not the kind of top priority. But saying that, quality is as important for many organizations. So even if growth is a big aspiration in this strategy, you need to, and you know, should want to still focus on quality. So it could be about growth and then maintaining the quality, or it could be around, you know, really small levels of growth in this strategy, but really focusing on upping the level of quality of your services, making sure that what you're delivering is the best service and the best quality that you can deliver for those beneficiaries. Another really common strategic focus area is innovation. And, you know, going through the process of a strategic plan is really exciting because it does allow you to think about what else we could be doing. And it might not be appropriate to think about innovation at every strategic, you know, kind of planning review or planning process. But for many organizations, you want to keep pushing, you want to keep trying new things and seeing if there are different ways that you can achieve your charitable objects, different ways that you can have impact on for those communities that you support. So innovation is often an area that is in one of the strategic themes or focus areas. Thinking back to my example of the youth charity, you know, stakeholders and working with others is a really important and common one. You know, it's never been more important, I don't think, from a, you know, impact perspective, from a funder's perspective, from a commissioning perspective, to work with other partners and collaborate. So engagement and working in partnership, collaborating with other similar organisations, you know, is often a really clear focus for many organisations' strategy. But then thinking a bit more about your organisation, you know, in terms of its infrastructure and the things that make you who you are and allow you to deliver that impact in your communities is often just as important, and for many organisations requires some focus in their strategy. So it could be, you know, actually more simple things like, you know, kind of making sure that your internal capacities to support things like HR, that your systems and kind of IT and data and all of those things that really make your organisation work grow or get better or bigger. So, you know, it could be more of a focus on the infrastructure side of things, or it could be kind of regulatory kind of factors. So it could be around achieving some kind of quality mark. It could be about having more of a focus on your EDI over that period. So it's completely accepted to have focus areas that are a bit more internal looking than external and beneficiary or community or partner looking. And then sustainability. Again, we've seen the growth in the inclusion of a sustainability focus area in strategies over the last few years. And it's really unusual for it not to be quite a central part of most charities' strategies. And on its simplest level, for many, it's just about, you know, maintaining the fantastic work that they're already doing, but thinking about how they can have less of an impact on the planet, a negative impact on the planet. But, you know, setting out a sustainability focus is not just important, but something that actually some other stakeholders, partners, funders, those kinds of people do look at. So absolutely seeing more of those types of strategic focus areas included. So you have got your foundations, your high level kind of building blocks of your strategic plan now in terms of your vision, mission, possibly one high level goal for the strategic period, and then your 3 to 5 strategic themes or pillars. What next? So what do you do? How do you actually take that into a document that can be used by your colleagues, by your volunteers, by your trustees to make the difference that you've set out in that strategic plan? The first thing you need to do is, under those strategic themes, is set strategic objectives. So they need to be relatively specific and kind of tangible. So if it's the kind of growth theme that we referenced on the slide previously, it could be that you want to grow the number of beneficiaries by 20% over the next kind of 3 years. So you need to set that specific objective for each one of those themes. You will break it down further in a moment, but that kind of higher level objective for each one. You also want to set some deadlines. So when are you going to actually achieve that objective by? Is it just by the end of the strategic period? Or actually, are you staggering some of these things across the strategic period because some things have kind of greater priority over others, some are going to take longer than others. So it's really useful to set some deadlines to think about what you're going to achieve and by when within that window of the strategic plan that you've set. And then you break it down further into KPIs. And the growth one is a really kind of easy example to think about, because yes, you may want to grow the number of beneficiaries that you work with by 20%, but then breaking down actually what does that look like? So that might look like, you know, kind of 10 extra activity sessions per week in the current locations that you're in. It might then also look like opening up 2 more kind of youth projects in your local authority or in your region. It could be trying to, you know, a different type of model, working with a different age group. So it's about breaking it down. So how are you going to achieve the high level objectives? What does that look like in detail, and how are you going to measure it? And then start thinking about the who and the what and the how. And for most organizations, unless you're really small, this isn't about assigning every individual in your organization a task within the action plan, but it is about looking at who's accountable for each area, and who is going to have overall responsibility for delivering that specific strategic theme or individual parts within it. So it's about capability rather than the who's going to be doing what on the ground. The other really useful, you know, kind of benefit of this particular part, so that allocation of resources, it does help you think through whether you have the right skills, capability, resource within your organization to actually deliver what you've set out to achieve. So it does start to kind of identify some gaps in terms of perhaps it might be skills, or it could be just pure kind of people power to actually make it happen. And then it's about communicating. So, you know, you will have kept your colleagues, your trustees, your internal stakeholders in particular up to date with this process, and they will have had touch points throughout, and it's really good practice to do that. But you need to also communicate, you know, kind of this vision and this plan to them and get their buy-in and get them to feedback on how realistic they think it is, what kind of barriers or challenges can they foresee to achieving it. So communicating the plan, but also your expectations, and taking their thoughts and feedback at this point to allow you to then adjust and think about, maybe do you need other resources to allow you to do it? And then begin implementation, launch your strategy. And this is where you communicate it to the world. This is where your colleagues and your organization actually starts doing the do. The important thing is, you know, don't just launch it and then ask people to start delivering on it, but then let it sit on a shelf and don't ever really talk about it again with your kind of colleagues and your team members. Do check in regularly. You know, make sure that the expectations you've communicated in that previous step are still understood. They're still a reality, that people aren't coming across new challenges, new issues that you perhaps haven't anticipated. And that allows you then to continue to kind of measure and monitor performance against it, which we're not going to go into today. That's a kind of whole other probably webinar that we could do on it. But, you know, that certainly feeds into, you know, if you've got some really open dialogue about the delivery and the implementation of the strategy, once it gets going and people understand it and start doing those things that you set out to achieve, it absolutely supports that process. So I believe the next slide, I'm handing back over to Will, who is going to talk, I believe, a little bit about his, I mean, I don't want to be offensive, but poor golf performance, is that right?
Yeah, there's nothing like ending a webinar with some self-deprecation. So we're aware that this webinar has been, you know, full of information, and it can be hard to kind of piece that information and build a picture in your mind of what that information means. And we've created a bit of a framework. And this is by no means the only way of having a strategic framework. This is an example. And the example that we've used for a 5-year strategic plan is my poor golf prowess. And my vision is a world where I am regularly happy with my golf performances. And some of you listening may think that is not ambitious enough. If you've played with me, then you'll know that's perfectly apt. And my mission is to relentlessly pursue excellence in golf through continuous improvement, data-driven insight, and a growth mindset, unlocking full potential on and off the course. And now, between the mission and that turquoise square that says strategic focus areas / pillars, you might have a overarching strategic goal, like Katy mentioned. And this really is dependent on the complexity of your charity or of your strategy, essentially. It's some charities, they can pin the success of their strategy down to one goal, one metric, but more often you can't. And that's where the strategic goals that fall beneath each of the pillars come into play. So after the mission, I've done extensive consultation with everyone that has a stake in my golf performance. There isn't that many. And I've identified 4 key areas, 4 key pillars that will support my vision. So effective course management, how agile I am to the changes in the weather, changes in the golf course I'm playing on, and I'm going to build a strategic goal and a set of objectives, actions, and KPIs that will help me, that will basically tell me if I've satisfied that pillar. Collaborative support networks, who I'm playing with, what memberships I'm a part of, how collaborative is the people around me. I'm going to build a set of metrics around that pillar as well. Functional resources. So we spoke about the tools that will help delivery, that will aid success. So I'm going to use a variety of different equipment for my build, my height, that can essentially aid me in improving my golf performance. And I'm going to create a set of strategic goals, objectives, actions, and KPIs around that. And then informative data and insight. I'm going to use data and insight in a way that will aid me in my golfing prowess. And one thing that I'd like to mention across these areas is something that we come across quite regularly when we take clients through the strategy development process, is that specific goals and specific actions might filter across to other pillars. And that's generally because we're talking about the same organization, and these areas don't operate in silos, and there will always be a continuous link between these pillars. But I'm hoping that will give you a bit of a picture of all of the things we've spoken about today, and hopefully last in your minds when you go away and create your strategy. And I believe that's it from Katy and I. And what we'd really love is to open the floor to some questions, and we'll endeavour to answer them.
So you can either submit your questions in the Q&A or chat box, or put your hand up and we can allow you, well, it says allowed to talk, which sounds very controlling, but we can give you permission to ask a question. And I personally am looking forward to hearing how a presentation of your golf strategy goes to your friends and acquaintances you next play golf with, and how that's going to be received. Yeah, I'll let you know. Okay, do we have any questions? Doesn't look like it. If anyone would like to ask a question, please. Oh, we've got a hand raised. Brilliant. Tia.
Hi, I'm looking at just timeframes. So when you start engaging with your stakeholders, to start asking them questions, is that go on forever? Bearing in, or for my organisation, which is a small charity, delivering counselling services, everybody works part-time. I'm trying to get hold of people can sometimes take forever. It's like chasing cats sometimes, trying to get people to answer an email, me included. So, like, how long roughly should this whole process, very roughly, should the whole process take?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Tia. I think with if we start with the stakeholder consultation, like, if you're a small organization with limited resources, definitely utilize some of the free tools that are out there. So things like Typeform and SurveyMonkey, and it's absolutely okay to do the vast majority of your consultation in that way. You may just then want to pick 3 or 4 individuals that you want to have a bit more of a in-depth discussion with. And as long as that kind of survey has some open, qualitative data in it as well that you can pull some more detail from, then do make it as easy on yourself as possible, because I recognize it's a lot. So if you do that and you try and keep that stakeholder consultation as impactful but as efficient as possible, put it that way, you can write a strategy. If you've got a good engaged board that commit to a couple of meetings to help think this through and review and then sign it off in a couple of months, probably, I would say. We sometimes do strategies in kind of 3 to 4 months with much bigger organizations, and albeit there's a couple of us working on that project. But even then, with the right people behind it who are making things happen, and meetings in advance in the diary to allow you to have those key touch points, kind of 8 to 10 weeks is perfectly achievable, I'd say.
Cool. Yeah, lovely. Thank you. That's very helpful.
No problem, dear. Any other questions?
Question from Chris about, in terms of engaging stakeholders, what methods have you seen / used that have been really effective and innovative?
Good question. So, picking up on, and Will obviously chip in, because I know we've worked on a couple of projects together with a really broad range of stakeholders, a big national charity I'm thinking of. So picking up on, the kind of answer to Tia, regardless of the size of your stakeholder consultation, there are some fantastic tools out there that allow you to, get that feedback and insight in really interesting ways. Typeform, some of the kind of polling tools that you've got out there, some of the kind of online survey software that then does some really interesting analysis for you and does all the hard work for you. But I think it is also about adapting, and it goes back to Will's point about being appropriate for the right audience. So if you're working with young people, things like focus groups are really good, and encouraging, in a really informal, gentle way, young people to give their feedback on the support and services that they access. But we've done kind of large scale staff consultations, haven't we, Will? Town hall meetings.
I was just going to say, it really, the message that you provide the stakeholders when you're looking to launch a stakeholder consultation project is quite integral, in that if you say that this is a chance to influence the next strategic period of this organization, oftentimes people will jump at the chance to contribute, especially if your charity's got a really concise and consolidated affiliate of stakeholders around them that are really engaged. But just linking in with Katy's point, we've obviously tools like SurveyMonkey, but it's about understanding your stakeholders and knowing where they're going to be, attending events where they're going to be attending, and also just like Katy alluded to, just making sure that you're open to any format of communication, and trying to, if you're struggling with kind of that direct consultation, trying to, like I mentioned, go to places where they're going to be in kind of an indirect way might be beneficial for you as well. And also, just lastly, it might be worth offering an incentive as well. So we've done a kind of mass stakeholder consultation project with one of our clients, where we've offered an Amazon gift voucher as a financial incentive for contributing, which might be something that you may be in a position to do as well.
It was young people, I believe, wasn't it, Will? Was it?
Yeah, young people, yeah.
Incentives for young youth consultations, often useful. No, totally agree. I hope that helps, Chris. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to say no, but do raise your hand if you do have anything else to ask. But yeah, thank you everyone for sitting and listening to us. Hopefully it's been useful and that you've got some kind of tips and tools that you can take away to try and approach your strategic plan. But, you know, kind of final tips, really break it down into stages, you know, manage as big a consultation as you think you can to, and, you know, absolutely use the trustees and people that you have around you to feed into it. They need to be working with you to develop this strategic direction. But if you kind of follow the structure that we've provided, hopefully it won't feel too overwhelming, and that you can pull something together that's really going to help increase your impact and reach over the next kind of 3, 5, 10 years, however long it might be. But huge thank you. And tops crashing again. Will, do you want to, I don't know if you can hear me, I think I've frozen.
Yeah, I think you just broke up there for a little bit, but I just wanted to say a massive thank you, and I really hope that you all got something from today, and be great to hear from you in the future.
There we go. I'm back. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.